You likely know my next guest as a TV personality, specifically from America's Got Talent and Deal or No Deal. But Howie Mandel has been performing stand-up for 45 years, and he's bringing that talent to this year's Moontower Just For Laughs Comedy Fest in Austin. He's performing at the Paramount Theater on Wednesday, April 19th, and tickets can be purchased at austintheater.org. Recently, I had a chance to chat with Howie about his career in comedy, feeling emboldened by stand-up entering another golden age, COVID, people not washing their hands after using the restroom, and more. Howie, thank you so much for the time. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, I think. I'm not an expert, but I think I'm doing okay.
Now, you've been doing stand-up for almost 50 years now, or maybe
Right.
It is 50 years at this point. How many chances have you had to actually perform in Austin, though?
I've been to Austin many times, but the truth is that, up until about 3 years ago, I was doing close to 200 live dates a year. And then COVID shut everything down, but me especially, because I've been very open about my mental health issues and anxiety and germophobia. So this is probably my 15th show in 3 years. So I'm especially nervous, but especially excited. And I can't think of a better place to be nervous and excited than the Austin area.
Yeah, you are in the unique position, Howie, where once the COVID pandemic began, on Twitter, almost without fail, people were reaching for that low-hanging fruit of, oh my God, somebody check on Howie Mandel.
Yeah, well, Howie is Latin for told you.
But I would assume that even though you haven't done a ton of stand-up in the last 3 years, that it is a bit like riding a bike in terms of not forgetting how to do it, even if you are having to hone jokes here and there too, though.
For me, I love discomfort, and I'm very comfortable with discomfort. So there's going to be more discomfort than I've had in the last, 45 years of my career, but that kind of works for me. I look at it like a giant party, and I'm just trying to be the center of attention.
I don't know if you consider yourself to be a Stoic, but that is a tenet of the Stoic philosophy that discomfort is really good for you. What do you love about discomfort?
It's better than boring complacency. I still love, even at my age, I love thrill rides. I love roller coasters. I don't want to just get onto something that just, doesn't go up or down and just rides really slowly with a little breeze. I want to go to a high mountain and be dropped to, death-defying speed and feel my adrenaline, surge through me. And that's what stage feels like right after somebody says, ladies and gentlemen, Howie Mandel. I'd like to feel like, everything I've said this many times, but everything I was ever expelled for, gotten in trouble for, was punished for, is what I seem to get paid for. I love stand-up comedy. And even if you know me from America's Got Talent or Deal or No Deal, stand-up comedy is my happy place. And that I should mention that because a lot of people do know me from more people probably know me from what I just mentioned. Don't bring the kids. I don't edit myself, and that's the beauty of it. I don't have a mark to hit, a commercial to throw to, lines to recite. Anything can happen on stage. And that's what I love. That's my freedom. That's my primal scream at the end of the day.
Well, I guess I'm in that smaller category of people who is more interested in you as a stand-up comedian, because I look at you as somebody who was doing it, honing that craft during the golden era of stand-up. You get your start in Toronto, you eventually make your way to LA. And it's funny, in reading your backstory in a lot of places, people mention in the same breath that you get passed at the Comedy Store, and then that leads to you getting your first TV gig with Make Me Laugh, which is fine. I understand why they do that. But by the same token, as somebody who is a nerd for the art form of stand-up, Howie, I love to hear comedians talk about getting passed at the Comedy Store specifically. So for you, as somebody who cherishes stand-up as much as you do, how much does getting passed by Mitzi back in the late 1970s still stick out in your mind?
Didn't know this is something my career started on a dare 1977 in Toronto at a place called the Yuck Yucks. I went to this comedy club, and because I had never seen stand-up comedy live, aside from on the Tonight Show or something, and it was just something to do because in the mid 70s discos were all the rage, and I'm not somebody who's goes to nightclubs to dance. I don't drink, and I don't gamble, and I have no athletic acumen, so I didn't get together the Y and play basketball with friends. I didn't do any of that. So I was at the stand-up show, and the host said, if anybody thinks they can do it, at midnight, just sign up and go on you get 3 minutes of amateur time. And somebody at the table said, you should do it. And I went, okay. And because I do, I always say, okay. I always say yes. That's why I'm on this show. And I went on stage and without anything planned and nothing to do. And if you look at the old YouTube recordings of me, it's just terrifying. It's me being terrified. And that's why I'm going, okay, all right, okay. I was really just trying to think of things, and I was terrified. And I put my hands in my pocket, and I happen to have rubber gloves because I carry rubber gloves because I have OCD, and I knew if I was out, I'd have to go to a public restroom. And it wasn't for comedy, and they weren't props, but I put it over my head and I blew it up, and that became, a kind of a signature for me. And when I got off stage, he said, you got to come back tomorrow. And I went, for what? He goes, to do it again. And it was kind of fun. And it was just something that I did a couple times a week when they gave me spots. So when I went out to Hollywood, I was actually out here on a vacation. And one of the people that I had met at the comedy, at the Yuck Yucks, Mike Binder, who's a very well-known director, writer, and comedian, and now he's going back to stand-up, said, come over to the Comedy Store. And I went to the Comedy Store. I wasn't pursuing it as a career. And he put me on to the Comedy Store. And there, Mitzi and a producer who was doing comedy, Make Me Laugh, saw me. He gave me a TV show, and she said, you can come back and be a regular anytime. So it wasn't something that, for me personally, that I was pursuing. And therefore, I didn't realize what it even meant. And I went back home to Toronto, and I started getting calls from the Mike Douglas show and the Merv Griffin show. And I would fly back, and I still had a day job, and I would fly in and out and do these gigs until I said, you know what, I'm young and this is kind of fun. I'm going to try this for a while. And I flew out here, and lo and behold, I'm talking to you.
So wait a second. You went on a whim to the Comedy Store and actually got past your very first time going up there.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why there was a lot of resentment toward me, because nobody knew where I came from, and I didn't have that same kind of wish and dream and hope that everybody else had. George Carlin's wife, Barbara, saw me also around that same time and cast me for I think it's the 6th annual HBO Young Comedian special in that 1981. Within that first couple of years I was out here without even doing anything. And I did that. I did the Young Comedian special. It's me, Jerry Seinfeld, Richard Lewis, and Harry Anderson are on that, hosted by the Smothers Brothers. And when that thing aired, that blew me up, and I was able to sell 5,000 to 10,000 tickets a night for stand-up comedy, and my life just changed. It was just, but it's like I stumbled into this, just like I stumbled into, I thought, okay, now I have some success as a stand-up. The normal path was to get a sitcom, and I went and met at MTM, and they put me on St. Elsewhere, which was not a sitcom. And then I became an actor for 6 years, starting at the same place as Denzel Washington, and then my whole career has been stumbling. I wasn't chasing Saturday Morning, and I got Bobby's World and got a whole voiceover career with the Muppet Babies and Gremlins and Gizmo. And then I didn't think of being a game show host or a judge on a talent show. I just keep stumbling through life into these wonderful careers. But stand-up is the mainstay.
So was the Comedy Store your home club then throughout much of the 1980s?
All yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And even now, if I want to write and if I want to go try things out, that's where I go now. I live in LA, and if I want, if I work out for JFL, or if I want to, if I have some ideas and I want to know whether other people, aside from me, think it's worth a giggle, that's where I will go. And that's why and that's what I'm doing now. And that's why even when I'm coming to Austin, I think the night before I'm going to be in San Antonio, just dropping in on a club there and doing, you know, seeing, trying out some ideas I have and scribbled down or texted down on my phone and making sure they'll work in Austin.
Well, Austin is quickly becoming a third coast for stand up thanks to
No, I think it is the coast because of Joe Rogan and the mothership. And I believe that it's the mecca. In the 70s, in the early 70s, New York was the mecca for comedy. And then Johnny Carson moved out to the West Coast, and that became the litmus test to get on the Tonight Show. So everything, the Improv and the Comedy Store, they all opened up in LA, and LA was the mecca. And I think that now Austin, the whole shift of anybody now that is playing arenas, that is playing big venues, that is well known, has to make a mark in Austin. You can't launch yourself out of LA, New York, or anywhere anymore like you can in Austin. You look at the people like Joe Rogan and Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura and all these people, and they're not only launching themselves but other people because of them. And Rogan's new club, if you look at the people that have been playing there and dropping in, I think that speaks volumes to how important Austin is.
Yeah, it is a beautiful space. I was there on night 2, and one of the cool things about Rogan is that he's all about helping other comedians to raise their exposure as well. Love to see that out of somebody who obviously doesn't have to do that if he doesn't want to, but he's trying to give back to that community. This is maybe a bit of a random question about your time at the Comedy Store in the 80s, but one of the original comedians that this town really took as its own, even though technically he was a Houston guy, is Bill Hicks, who did spend a fair amount of time at the Comedy Store in the 1980s and early 1990s before his untimely passing. Do you have any experience around Bill Hicks, one way or the
Yeah,
other?
I hung out with him and got to work beside him, at the Comedy Store and in Westwood. I thought he was one of the greatest. He was one of the greatest. He was somebody who was speaking truth, and was kind of dark and fun and acerbic. And I love the guy, and it's a tragedy that the people today don't get to hear his voice. But luckily we have, YouTube and things like that. But I'd love to hear him comment on what's happening today and what the world is today. He was a kind of a pioneer.
It does feel like stand up is going through a sort of renaissance right now as a response, perhaps, to the hyper woke movement from a couple of years ago. And I think as a response also to people being shut in like they were for a good chunk of the last 3 years due to the global pandemic. Even though you haven't done a ton of stand up in the last 3 years, do you think that stand up is in a really good place just in terms of the acceptability of the art form?
Yeah, I was one of the. I was really worried and really scared about where this art form was going, and the fact that political correctness, wokeness, Me Too, and all these other, you know, things that were happening in society would shut down, this the freedom of what this art form is. But I think that at this point, I think you just said it perfectly, and I'm just going to repeat what you said. But I think there is a pushback to political correctness right now, at least in the realm of stand-up comedy. And right now, I think stand-up comedy is bigger than it has ever been. I think there are more comics right now on the road that are not only playing bigger venues but playing they're in arenas and theaters, and they're international. I think because of you know, digital, because we're in the digital age and they can be seen. Like people aren't even selling. When you look at somebody like Ari Shafir, who's brilliant, he's not selling his show to cable or to Netflix. They have the ability to just do what they want to do with all the freedom they have and just post it on their YouTube channels and get millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of followers worldwide. So, when I was coming up in the 80s and when you talked about the Comedy Store, you could make it good in America. Maybe, people knew you in the UK and Canada. But now you could be international. There's so many comics that are playing Australia, England, India, Dubai. They're just it's bigger and it's more widespread than it has ever been.
Ari's Jew special is brilliant. Definitely one of the best stand-ups to come out in the last year or so. So I'm glad that you gave him a little bit of love there. And you do stand-up from a unique vantage point because you are also obviously having to play the network game, which you expressed some concern a few years ago in a Rolling Stone interview about just what you're able to say versus saying something where you end up stepping on an unintentional landmine and you end up getting canceled as a result. So seeing the resurgence of stand-up and seeing other people doing it the way that it has it empowered you once again to feel more comfortable with rolling with whatever the jokes is that you are trying to tell on stage?
Yeah, and that's why even when I do an interview like I'm doing with you, I will make sure, I've mentioned, and this will be the second time, don't bring kids, or it's not good, it's not family fair. Expect the possibility of crossing a line. You're not gonna, what I do on stage is not what I do on network, on television. I think I'm a responsible entity, whether I'm broadcasting, and that's broadcast on NBC and AGT and Deal or No Deal or whatever you're seeing, as opposed to, there's a time and a place for everything. And in a theater or a club at night, seeing stand up, I think that there are the boundaries are kind of loosened, but that and sometimes it makes me a little schizophrenic as far as deciding where I am and how far I'll be willing to go.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned limits because I think the pendulum is swinging too far in the other direction with regards to the purelification of society. Now we have TikTok trends where women are openly admitting that they never wash their hands after going to the bathroom. I was just listening to your episode with Adam Carolla from a couple weeks ago where
My
he's talking
podcast, yes,
your
yes.
your podcast, yes. Howie Mandel does stuff where he's talking about swimming in the pool instead of taking baths and showers and not washing his hands after the bathroom, maybe considering it after going number 2. Howie, why the hell are people not washing their hands when they're leaving the bathroom? I understand.
I'm not the guy to ask. That was one of the most disgusting moments I've spent. We have since disinfected my studio, and I love Adam, and he's a good friend. I don't know. And just the thought of it, just being asked this question, makes me really, really uncomfortable. And that's why, listen, that's what I thought of. But I thought that was just something that was going on in my own mind. To hear somebody articulate that they don't wash, and to listen to you tell me that this is what you're reading and it's rampant throughout the network, throughout the YouTube or wherever you're watching it, or TikTok, it's crazy. And it's so I don't think I'll be doing a meet and greet in Austin. But I'll perform for you. I just don't want to meet you. I don't want to greet you. I don't want to smell you.
That's fair. And if there's an exception to your germophobia, it might have to do with something that happened in the latter part of the 2000s, and that is when you got to shoot a commercial, or maybe it was do voiceover for a commercial for the NHL that gave you some time with the Stanley Cup. They actually
Oh my
brought
gosh,
the Stanley Cup.
but I love that the Stanley Cup showed up. The guy that carries it around wears gloves. But then I realized that the Stanley Cup, it's probably seen its fair share of bodily fluids and germs, but it's not a porous silver, so that I'm sure it was disinfected and cleaned before I got my hands on it.
So considering your Canadian roots and the fact that this is the Stanley freaking Cup, which is far and away the coolest sports trophy of any that exist, what would it take for you to drink water out of the cup of the Stanley Cup, knowing the bodily fluids and other things that have happened with that piece of hardware over the last 100 or so years?
So what is the title of this show that I'm on right now? This is not Truth or Dare, is it? I'm not thirsty. I don't want to drink out of it. I just want to look at it. I touched it. Then I washed my hands. I took a picture with it. I don't want to drink. I don't remember what the question was, but I can still feel the disgust from whatever it was.
So some guys will, when in their day with the cup, they will literally cuddle the cup and go to sleep with it. So you wouldn't consider even sleeping with it in the same bed?
No, it's just me and the cup, or are there two girls also?
Dealer's choice.
Two girls, one cup. See what I did there?
That was well freaking done. Oh man. How much of a joy is it getting to do the podcast with your daughter, Jackie, Howie?
That's the bright spot in my week. I just left. That's where I'm driving from. I just had that'll go up next week. We have Nick Cannon coming up. He does our he just did it, and we have Harlan Williams. I have Tom Sandoval coming up.
Who's Tom Sandoval?
Well, he's got that. I didn't know that either. Apparently, he cheated on his girlfriend on Vanderpump Rules, and it's a Scandival. I have no idea, but he's coming up. Some people in my office are very, very, very excited about it. So then I am.
Well, you know what? There's people that are more excited about some comedians than others at Moontower Just For Laughs coming up here next week and the week after. I'm pretty excited to get to check out Howie Mandel. He's going to be performing April 19th. You can get tickets at austintheater.org. The festival runs from the 12th to the 23rd. He is Howie Mandel, comedian, TV personality, actor, producer, and podcaster. Check out his podcast, Howie Mandel Does Stuff, which he co-hosts with his daughter, Jackie. Howie, thank you so much for the time today, and thank you for all the work over the years, man.
Thank you, buddy.
Thanks to Gentleman Jesus for the intro and outro music. Hear more of his work at gentlemanjesus.com. Thanks to you for checking us out. For more of the show and to connect on social media, visit booksonpod.com. We'll talk to you next time on Books on Pod.